So, Ottawa was actually named the most livable city in North America for 2026. The ranking comes from the 2026 Quality of Life Index by Numbeo, and it's based on things like cost of living, traffic, commute, basically how everyday life feels for people living there compared with other big cities across Canada and the US. But why? Aside from what you read in the articles about lower crime rates, lower pollution, decent access to healthcare, what is it about Ottawa that makes it so livable? I lived in 3 major cities across Canada: Montreal, Vancouver, and now Ottawa, and here's how I would very simply put why I think Ottawa is so livable. The traffic is not downright terrible here. You're not sitting in traffic for hours. I'm looking at you, Toronto. Even if you live outside of downtown in the suburbs, getting around is usually pretty reasonable. You're not spending hours in traffic unless something really major has happened on the 417. Now, if you're living in areas like the West End, for example, it's pretty straightforward by car to get downtown. Without traffic, you can be there parked within, let's say, 30 minutes. And I say this from real experience because that's not the case for Vancouver or Montreal. In Vancouver, driving from places like Surrey or even White Rock to downtown can be at least an hour each way, and it's not direct. In Montreal, there are potholes literally everywhere. There's almost constant construction, and even the highways can feel really confusing or hard to follow. Ottawa generally feels easier to drive in. The roads are a little bit better laid out, and you're not constantly rerouting yourself or getting lost. Housing still feels possible. In a lot of cities, especially like Vancouver or Toronto, people are having to choose between space or staying close to work. And most of the time, they get neither. Here in Ottawa, people can still get a home with an extra room, a yard, or a basement without needing this crazy extra income. Ottawa's housing has definitely caught up with the rest of Canada in cost, especially throughout and after COVID. But it still feels more affordable overall. If you look at condo prices here, they are very different from Vancouver or Toronto, and not just in cost, but in actual usable space. You get noticeably bigger square footage for your money here. And if you're looking for something like a townhouse here, you can often find a nice 2-story townhouse with 2 or 3 bedrooms, a basement, a yard, maybe even a single car garage without having to spend close to $1 million. Unlike Montreal or Vancouver. Actually, if you look at Ottawa Real Estate Board stats, the average price for a townhouse in Ottawa for December 2025 was $548,000. In Vancouver or Toronto, for example, that kind of setup at that price point is almost unheard of. Montreal does have some affordable options in some areas, but often with either smaller square footage or older homes that are needing a little bit more work. So in Ottawa, housing feels like something people can actually build a life inside and not just fit into. Ottawa is actually pretty well set up for families. Parks, schools, recreation centers, libraries, they are literally everywhere. You don't have to plan your whole weekend just to get your kids outside or get them into any activities. When we lived in Vancouver, we actually had to drive just to get to the nearest park with a decent play structure. After moving here, I was surprised how many parks are within walking distance in our neighborhoods here in Ottawa. Even from street to street within the same area, that's rare. Ottawa's also working towards what they call the 15-minute neighborhoods, which basically means they're trying to make sure that people get what they need, like parks, schools, shops, services, within about a 15-minute walk or bike ride from home. The idea is that your daily life doesn't require a car trip, so you can live, shop, learn, work, and play close to where you actually live. That obviously doesn't mean that every single thing is going to be right outside your doorstep, but it does mean the neighborhoods are designed so that daily life is more convenient and it feels easier. On a regular Tuesday, you can go to work, make a grocery stop, have dinner, and still have time to take your kids out to their activities. And you don't feel like you're stretched too thin on time. People come here for work and they actually stay here. Ottawa has a lot of steady jobs in the government: tech, healthcare, education, and public services, and that has a real impact on how the city feels. A huge part of Ottawa's job scene here is the public sector, which brings stability that you don't always find in major cities. On top of that, one of Canada's major tech hubs is right in Canada, with big tech parks and a lot of steady employment opportunities coming from companies based there. So because of that, these areas bring in people who are staying long term and not just bouncing from contract to contract. Now, there's also a lot of people that move here from more expensive cities across Canada because the cost of living was actually becoming too high for them to actually have a comfortable life. So Ottawa ends up being a place where people don't feel pressure to move again after a couple of years. They stay, they put roots down, and they build a life here. Having a solid job market like that changes the kind of community that you end up with. It's actually pretty outdoorsy. Look, it's definitely no Vancouver. We don't have beautiful beaches, mountains, islands, but we have walking paths, we have rivers, lakes, bike routes, Green spaces, the Rideau Canal, it's all nearby. You don't need this big plan or long drive to get outside and do something fun as a family on a weekend. There are kilometers of bike and pedestrian paths that link together so that you can get around by foot or bike more easily, and a lot of them go right by parks or even water. And having that kind of thing close by really changes how you spend your days here in Ottawa. You don't have to wait for a perfect weekend to go outside. So what do you think? Would you move to Ottawa? If you and your family are considering making Ottawa home and you're not sure where you should live, I've not only helped many families make the move over here, but I've also done a few relocation moves myself, and I know just how hard it can be. If you're in need of some real estate services or some guidance about your move here to Ottawa, send me a message.